thanks for the invitation to present, and it's great to see so many people here and some familiar faces. I'm just going to quickly share my screen. I just put together a little PowerPoint. It's not long, it's very brief. Let me just check if can you all see my screen? Perfect. So yeah, I'm going to just give you a brief overview of my non-linear career path, both inside and outside academia. So I'm going to start with my undergrad studies, my graduate studies, and my postdocs. And then I left academia for a period of time to work in government. And now I've come back to academia, but in a really non-traditional role. So I want to share this with you and talk a little bit about the roles that I've taken on. And I bring a bit of an international perspective. I've had a whirlwind journey across many different countries, and I'll share that with you. So I'll also be just adding in a few little lessons learned that, I've taken away from my career journey that hopefully would be helpful for each and every one of you. So let me just go here. Okay, so I'm going to start with my undergrad. I'm from Australia. You can probably tell I have an accent. That's where I did all my undergraduate training. I'm a basic scientist by training, so purely at the bench in reproductive biology. So cells, tissues, animals, you name it. And I really have changed a lot across species, across reproductive organs. I really wanted to do a lot of different things there. During my PhD, I did an intensive course in the US. It's called Frontiers in Reproduction. It was a great experience. It was 6 weeks full-time in the US at the Marine Biological Laboratory. And I was also on the board of directors for the Society of the Study of Reproduction. And I put this here because it was a great networking opportunity that I'm going to come back to later. So I started my first postdoc in the UK. So I was at the University College London. That's where I first started my postdoctoral training. And then that postdoc actually migrated to Canada, which is what brought me here. So it's still the same postdoc. I went from University College London to University of Montreal, and then I ended up doing a second postdoc, all in some form of reproductive biology and reproductive health. I did ovarian cancer, endometriosis, male fertility, maternal aging, you name it. And so at the end of my second postdoc, I was not really sure what to do. I loved science. I loved the academic job, in that fact that it was very diverse and having many different, you wear many different hats. But I also was aware of, and I'd gotten funding for fellowships and I was doing everything right, if you like, but I still enjoyed doing, the role I had at SSR on the board, the administrative side, management. I still liked that. So I actually took a position outside of academia. I worked at the CHR Institute of Gender and Health, which many of you might know. We advocate for including sex and gender across the health research spectrum. So I started there as a science strategy lead, and then I worked my way up to assistant director. And then after that, which is my current position, is now I'm back in academia, but I'm not in an academic appointment. So I am a scientific research manager of a new program called Derive, which I'll go into shortly. But this just gives you an overview of kind of my career journey. And I'm going to go into the more specifics of the two most recent positions I've had at the Institute of Gender and Health and then Derive. So at the Institute of Gender and Health, it was really a unique position because you would probably think, well, this is government. This is working for CHR. This is a national funding agency, and you're right. But it really straddles both academia and government. And that's because, well, the institutes themselves, the 13 institutes under the umbrella of CHR, really are, the liaison between researchers and government. And so I wouldn't say that I necessarily left academia, or I would say that really, I think this non-academic and academic terms, the binary terms, it's not binary. Okay, it's a spectrum, and many jobs can straddle many different industries, and you can still be attached to academia while doing other positions, even in nonprofits or industry, for example. So in the academic side, I was still analyzing data. I had grants management data on the number of women and men that applied to CHR's funding opportunities, the number of projects that were integrating sex and gender in their research. So I published manuscripts I presented at scientific conferences, and I was advising researchers on how they can integrate sex and gender into their research. So that was the academic side of that job. And on the government side, I was developing science policies, launching funding opportunities, identifying priority research areas, and then requesting more money from Treasury boards. So I guess the take-home message here is that, it's not just one industry. I think all industries are interconnected, and it's important to remember that when thinking about your career journey. And so here's just to show you that these are the papers that we published while I was at the Institute of Gender and Health. So I was still actively publishing, even though I was no longer doing a postdoc. And so that really is my first lesson learned, that you can still do science and publish even if you don't have an academic appointment. I'm still doing it now, and I was doing it at the Institute of Gender and Health. And you can do it if you're working in a nonprofit, for example. When I was at the Institute of Gender and Health, we launched funding opportunities for community organizations to apply and get funding. In industry, you might have private funding to do research. So I just wanted to emphasize this, because the mindset, you might be sitting there saying, I love research, I want to stay in research and publish science, but I don't know if I want to be an academic, or it's really hard to get a tenure track position. And so this is just something I wanted to leave you with, to show that you don't necessarily have to have that kind of position to still do science. So my current position is, it's really leading a new interdisciplinary research program that was privately funded. So this is a very different approach to academia, and I've really just highlighted my diverse roles that I do in this position. So this is really my job description of what I'm doing right now. And when I first started, it wasn't called Drive. It wasn't anything. I was given a position to build this from the ground up. So along the way, you can see here knowledge mobilization. I've come up with branding and a name and a logo. That's all part of the position. So I was asked to launch a new research program that spans basic science, clinical science, and population health. And so I provide strategic leadership on establishing the scientific direction for this program. And I'll go in the next slide exactly what we do. But I also provide operational leadership. So I manage the budget, I hire new staff. I build collaborations with researchers. We work with people who are genetic epidemiologists, people who are experts in AI, computational biology, clinicians. So we have to really bring together all the right people to do the research. So that's part of my job. I'm also in the lab. I really loved the lab, and it was hard to step away. So I'm still back in the lab part-time. I'm working, setting up human organoid experiments and doing some gene editing there. I'm also learning to code. I never learned to code with my training, so that's something I'm excited to do. I always like to learn. I'm still applying for grants to get more funding beyond the private funding we have. So applying to CHR, NSERC, going to conferences, presenting the data we have, and in team building, supervising students, and really supporting the entire research team. So that really shows you, I guess, the diverse responsibilities that I have in this position, and it's a position that I love. It's a position that really suits me and my skills, and I think that's important to mention, because everyone, I think we are becoming more and more self-aware of what we like and what we don't like and what we want to do. And I think my non-linear pathway has led me here, and I'll get to that more in a little bit. But really, just to give you a snapshot of Derive, in case you're wondering, we really are trying to understand at a simplified level why people respond differently to environmental exposures. So it's one person, for example, who smokes their entire life might develop lung cancer, but another person who smokes may not. And we believe it's to do with the genetic variants that we express, and there's a gene-environment interaction. And so we are applying this hypothesis to test many diseases of development. So we're interested in prenatal, postnatal, and childhood development. And so we bring together the population level research, the dry lab, uncovering novel genetic variants and environmental factors. And that's the correlation part. And then the causation part is we're also functionally validating them in the lab with organoid models. So it's really cool. It's very interdisciplinary. It's very innovative. It's very high risk, high reward. And so that's really what I'm doing now, but I don't have an academic appointment. I just want to stress that. Now, my second lesson learned is that mentors advise, but sponsors act. So I really like this because, mentorship and sponsorship aren't the same thing. And So mentors, we probably all have a mentor, or, you know, on your PhD committee, your supervisor, you know, your past supervisor, and they're great to have. They provide guidance on what steps to take and what to do next. But sponsors are really play an active role. And I think it's important to mention that they really recommend you for things and can help boost your career. Sponsors aren't as straightforward as going up and asking someone to be a sponsor, but it's really about networking and promoting yourself and making the field know who you are and what you're good at and what your strengths are, so that you're recommended for talks or for a job. So as an example, my job at the CHR Institute of Gender and Health, I got that because of a sponsor that I met through my position on the board of directors of SSR. When this position came available, I didn't even know about it, but this professor had emailed the hiring manager and said, I think Jenna would be a great fit. Watch out for her CV. And that's how it kickstarted everything. So having, you know, networking and getting yourself out there can lead to people who advocate for you and want to see you succeed. And I think it's important to mention the two differences there. And just a couple more lessons learned before I finish. Having been on both sides of the table, and particularly now with CHR and then with Derive, employers don't get everything they want on their job ad. It's really important to mention, because we know that men are more likely, gender plays a role, men are more likely to apply for jobs even if they don't meet all the criteria compared to women and gender diverse people. So if you see a job ad and maybe you tick 7 out of 10 of the things that they want, I encourage you to still apply. You know, that's a wish list for employers, and they really rarely get everything they want. So just keep that in mind when you're looking for jobs, and don't let it deter you from applying if you don't have everything that they're asking for. My fourth lesson is that you can reject a job offer and be headhunted at a later date. This happened to me. I was offered a position. It was a very good position, and it wasn't the right time for me personally. So I declined, and a year later, they came back and offered me the same position when it became available again. It still wasn't the right time for me, so I didn't take it. But the key message is that you should still apply for positions, even if you're not really willing to accept that. If they were to offer it to you, accept it right now. You can apply for jobs for experience. And this could then lead to other positions within the company that they might think you're more suitable to, or potentially be headhunted, you know, down the line, as I mentioned. So just keep that in mind, and it's an experience for you when you're applying and interviewing. My last lesson that I'll leave you with is that I think non-linear career paths are becoming the new norm. So if we just look at the academic system, the linear career path would be undergrad, graduate studies, postdoc, tenure track position. We know that not everyone who does graduate studies is going to end up like that, and not everyone wants to. And I think we have to really talk more about non-linear career paths. And by non-linear, I mean these are active, intentional choices that we are making to learn more about ourselves and our likes and our dislikes, and to learn more about different positions that are out there. It's okay to take a position just because to step outside of the academic pathway and then potentially come back in. I know someone who was appointed last year in a senior position at McGill in the Genome Center, who had spent 10 years in industry in genetic research, and has now come back as a full professor. So this is becoming the norm, and I think we're starting to recognize the value that you bring from people who have gone and worked in various industries. So I just wanted to stress that it's okay if you don't know what you want to do, and not everyone's career path looks the same, and everyone has a different journey.